Hi, it's Joe.
And Keith.
And we are the partners of Argueta. We're a CPA firm located in Houston, Texas. We offer tax, audit, and accounting services. And we are filming another episode of Business Sense. So thank you for joining us. And again, please subscribe and share the love. Share our channel. We have a Spotify channel as well that the link will be in the description of this episode. So it is May 4th, 2022. There are a lot of hot topics. We got the Federal Reserve making a decision today. We had the leak coming out, and with regard to the Supreme Court, and we wanted to talk to you about what we wanted to talk to you about, which is managing stress of being a new business owner. So we have a lot to cover today. Hopefully we can get through all of it. But as we were about to film, we were having a really interesting conversation, or was about to get into it. Gabe, who really heads the marketing part of all of this, started getting into it. So as I said before, we don't script this. We don't have a script. This is just, all this is just I take notes. There's things that we talk about as the show goes on, and I want to make sure that I catch. And so I just take notes here. But it doesn't say anything. It just has a blank page. And so as we were getting to this, we asked Gabe, okay, what are some of the topics? He comes up with some topics that he thinks would be good. Yeah. And then we make a decision. Our format for this is we have rants before, so give the floor for Keith if he wants to make a rant, give the floor to me if I want to make a rant, and we rant, and then we get into the topic. So that was the plan for today. As it came out, we had some questions. Gabe was, explaining how we lost some followers when we, made some. What was the comment, Gabe, that you made? If you can talk loud. So if you can't hear him, I guess you'll let us know if you can't hear yourself.
That you can kind of hear.
Okay.
But that there's a post that we made, and then we lost a couple followers.
Okay, so we lost some followers. I don't know what we said, and so we were interested.
Yeah, I was interested too.
Yeah, because we just had this conversation yesterday about values and we're going through this process of figuring out who we really are.
Yeah.
As people, as a firm. And so Gabe said that he thought it was a good idea. So Keith had some interesting ideas I hope that we get into on how to avoid that. Why is it important for business? He was going to make the connection on, here's this leak that came out with the Supreme Court. It's a hot topic. Can you just act like it didn't happen? I don't think that that's good. It's... Yeah. You've told me before, what you've said before about current events, and you remember we had a meeting one time and you're like how, you read something or how you thought it was important to kind of acknowledge these things. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think my initial thought was that we should be careful of the topics that we talk about, just because, when we talk about current events, we want to try and not, anger or this, you know what I mean? And,
yeah.
and I was just kind of tiptoeing around what the topic should be. And then the further we talked about it, the more we realized, well, we can't appease everyone. We can't make everyone happy. So we should just talk about what we want to talk about,
Yeah.
And so it came as we spoke, we talked about how, it's sometimes you have to ruffle some feathers, I guess. And I talked about, you have to be careful not to ruffle feathers negatively. But I don't think that matters now. And so as we were trying to discuss whether or not we should even talk about the Supreme Court Justice leak, and we were like, Gabe was like, well, that's too political, it's too controversial. And we're like, well, maybe we shouldn't. And my angle was we should tie it into business, but why not talk about it? It's going on, it's happened. And I think, it's unfortunate that something like that can happen. And so while we're talking about it, my opinion is that the biggest thing that comes from this, of course, it's an important topic, Roe v. Wade and abortion and women's rights. And I get that. I totally get that. But I think that the biggest takeaway for me, in my opinion, is like someone leaked it. Someone inside of, I think it was Justice Alito, in maybe his circle or something happened where it was leaked. And I think that the biggest thing to take away from that is trust. Like you lose so much trust in whether it's the process, the people, the individuals that you think that are near you or clear or around you. We as Americans, as a democracy, we lose trust in our system because if our Supreme Court justices can't have conversations within themselves to have dialogue, have legal discussions, trusting the process, you lose trust in the process if you act this way. And I think 100%, my opinion is that it's fully political.
Has that changed for you? Because I feel like and this, my perspective, it could be wrong, it could be that you were always like this and it's just me getting to know you more. And I do want to visit because the question that I have for Gabe, Gabe's a little bit younger than us, and his comment was, we should avoid that. And I want to ask, and my comment to that was, well, why? What is the logic behind that? What's the goal that you're trying to obtain by avoiding that? Because I think that it can be, I really think it touches to what we were talking about last week, which is free speech and Elon Musk. Because it gets to, I feel like that having that response is the same thing that leads to the elimination of free speech. Well, we can't talk about these things, so let's eliminate them. And then you have groupthink. And I don't think, that's why I really appreciate the Jewish culture. So I'm not Jew, and I'm not, but I appreciate them because their culture is all about argument for truth's sake. Their culture is all about, let's talk about things to get to the truth. And when I was a weaker person, I couldn't do that because arguments to me, I would get defense mechanism and, I don't know, just that would trigger me, and I couldn't take that as a person, and then now as I get older and more mature, my kids want to debate me and, and we have, partners and we have people here, that are professionals and they want to, they take an angle. And so you realize that actually debate and discussion and banter is really important for society and people to progress. It truly is, because you don't progress if you never argue. And so I want to get to that because I want to hear his response. But what I was getting to you is, has that changed for you? Because I feel like when I first met you that maybe you were a little bit more reserved on some of these things and some of these issues. I knew you were conservative, but I think that probably even not have been a source of conflict, but maybe a source of value disagreement because, and I've kind of cooled down a little bit, but I know when we first met, I was real out there, even controversial sometimes. And I've kind of cooled down a little bit, because I've been a little more calculated about it. But it also seems more like now you are more evolving and progressing to really express who you are and be okay with that. Has that changed for you, or is that?
I think when we came into our partnership, I think that the biggest change for me was, was that I was a sole practitioner. I had 3 or 4 associates helping me, and so when we came together, then it no longer where I was kind of managing my own practice, managing my own small team, sole practitioner. Obviously, the buck stops with me, and so the decisions that had to be made at the executive level were really up to me. Whenever we came together, then we had to figure out, okay, how are we gonna address certain issues that should be addressed by a partner. And now it wasn't just me, it was you and I, and at the time Shihan. So, I kind of just, I didn't go into just full, like, calling all the shots, so to speak. It was kind of more like a shared responsibility. There was a new relationship that had to be formed and be cultivated. And so, in the first year, I felt like I was more from I would listen first. I would take a step back, process things, and sometimes it would take a day or 2 days, and then I would bring the topic back up. I think that was more of like getting more comfortable with you and and so my partners, and so I think that has changed now that it's really just you and I. We've known each other since working together since 2019, connected in 2018. Now that we've got a few years and we know each other a little bit better, it's like, let's talk about this, and it's a little bit easier, I guess, for us to have really open conversations.
So, then, when we came together, it changed up things, a lot. And it was like there was this friction and inertia that was there inherently because, you're trying to find some value alignment and trying to find, like, where do we go, where do we steer the boat? And that took a long time. And even I would say for like maybe like a year, for me, I just took a step back, and because I felt like it probably wasn't the best thing to do, but I felt like it is just, there was too much issues, and it just, you need some time for issues you need time, like time heals. And I think that was what I concluded. But where I've come from now, where I'm at is, when it comes about like leadership and executive in that part, and something that I've been talking to you about, and it took me a while, like ruminating on it for that to be distilled, like to make it like really clear about, okay, what is the ideal business structure? Like how really should a business be run? Like ideally, and there's a lot of different perspectives. And there's a lot of theories. Theories are interesting. They're tools that help you predict what you think the future is going to be. And so there's a lot of theories on how businesses should be run, and what your underlying theory is, how you've been brought up, what you've learned and read is going to influence that. So for example, if you're like a school of thought from Darwinism, like evolution and survival of the fittest, like you're going to think that you run and rule through like power and strength. Like it's domination, competition. And so if you go read, a couple books, go listen to a couple people, and this is what you believe, you're going to go and express that in your organization. And then hopefully you get some feedback, because I don't think it works that way. I don't think that if you lead that way that it's going to work. Maybe you can make it to the top, but you're going to be alone. It's going to be, because you're going to burn a lot of people, because that's not, I don't think, good leadership. But what I found is that how you lead is that you have to find something that's separable from you as a human being. Like there are things that we would call that are unalienable, right? Like the Constitution is based upon our unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These things are not, they are distinguished from you as a human being. They live outside of us, not within us, and they are eternal. And so that's what our country is built upon, those principles right there. And then as we pass laws, we should look back and say, is it honoring these? And that's why as American people, when it came to even just, everything that we've gone through the past few years is, you get this almost rebellion, because they're pushing back against these things, these values that are embedded within us, that come from our ancestors, that we can't even conceive and understand as American, that we're just built with these. The American spirit is a real thing, and if you try to suppress it, if you try to bring it down, it is going to rebel. That is the American spirit. And so on that token, it's like, well, you're going to have good days, I'm going to have bad days. You're going to have things going on in life that are going to influence your perspective. good or bad, you know.
Yeah.
But that's gonna happen. And so as human beings, like we're very fickle, you know. We oscillate between good, you know, chaos, order. We do that. But there are things that are outside of us that we should aspire and at least work towards and pursue. And those are what you call the ideal. That's what you call the mission. And it's beyond you. And it's higher than us. It's higher than me, it's higher than you. It's beyond us. And that's what you let lead. And then as a leader, so you say, here's our mission. Like if you're going out and you're going to war, you know, it's one thing to follow that captain, you know, the troops. And that would happen sometimes. I think if you think about like the Roman Empire, they would like the legions would be, I think they would be dedicated and devoted to like their commander or something. I can't remember what culture it was, but there was an issue with that because they would lead them instead of follow the nation. So you want your troops to follow that ideal, that pursuit of freedom and liberty. You know, you want that to supersede anyone and everyone. Because the minute that, if you're following a man, a human being, you're going to be let down. Because that guy is going to fail somewhere, someday. He's going to make a big mistake somewhere. You know, he might say something to you that just, you know, it's hard to recover from. And now you don't want to follow. And now you're demoralized. And so that's why I think the ideal organization has things and pursuits that transcend us. They transcend us and touch purpose. And then as a leader, executives, we are the ones who are sort of like the main disciples of it and are like, we embody it as best as we can, and then we give that to other people. And so that's where I've come from. And as far as how I've dealt with the stress is like, okay, I actually don't want to be the guy calling the shots. I want the higher purpose to govern the shots, so that when we're deviating, because it could be really easy that as an owner you can just say, I'm not going to come to work for a month, and you're like, if you're the one, if the buck stops with you in regards to that, then what makes it wrong or right? And that's what I meant, you know, before we had conversations. Like, I don't want to be the judge. You know, I would rather have something that is a principle, that is a value, that is a foundation, and then we judge ourselves through that, and we judge others through that. That's where you're at. Do you have any comments on that? Because I want to get into Gabe's question.
No, go ahead. I think
Okay.
you touched on a lot, but go ahead with Gabe.
Yeah, good. Why? This is what we need to know, Gabe. What's your logic? So I told Gabe, I said, man, that sounds very cliche, you know? Like, it's a very cliche thing, I think. I'm not saying you're shallow. I'm just saying, because he's laughing over here. Don't get mad. He's a big guy, too. I mean, what's your logic behind that? Tell me. And floor is yours.
Well, you know, the more I thought about it, the more I had time to actually like hear what Keith had to say about it and stuff like that. I think it's kind of in a point where like in today's day where you could say I like apples and somebody will be like, oh, what about oranges? You don't like oranges? So it's like, you know, having to navigate around that like parameter of like, what's going to happen if I say this or what'll happen if I say that. And I guess what I meant was, do you think it's worth to go through the repercussions of saying what you want to say? Not saying that you shouldn't always be honest. Not saying that you can't say whatever you want. I mean, you can. That's the whole point of, you know, the First Amendment, free speech. You can say whatever you want. It's just, do you want to deal with what comes afterwards? You know, you can say, it's like, you know, if you're at a dinner party and you know that someone over there would disagree if you brought up the topic, is it worth it to bring up the topic just to kind of like, you know, start an argument? It's like, sometimes it's not worth it. But with what Keith said, you know, this whole leak thing, it brings up a whole nother issue of trust, you know, honesty, what's actually happening in you know, governmental wise. It's breaching trust like on on a completely different level of just you're hiding something. I think it's a little bit more than you're just hiding something, or you're just making something sneaky. But yeah, I think that's what it really boils down to. If you ask me, I would say it. I would talk about it because I think you should be able to talk about anything you want. But again, in today's day and age, people kind of go crazy over the littlest things. So it's like, you can say it. You don't really know how people are going to respond. Even, and like I said, it could even be about the simplest things like apples and oranges. But, somebody could try to bring down the whole business just because you said that.
Mm-hmm.
I also said that, it's not my business too. I'm not, you guys hired me. So I would say that I wouldn't want to make that decision to be like, let's talk about something super controversial that, people probably are arguing about right now. So yeah, I'm glad I had a little bit of time to think about it, because I definitely was saying that with sort of like a cliche response, like, you know what, let's just not talk about it.
Right.
But the more I thought about it, there was more to it for sure.
And that's the key right there. You got something on that?
No, I mean, it seems like you gave it some more time to think about, and I think that in a sense is very, it's very, very thoughtful. It's a very pragmatic approach to, self-awareness. And you're right, but there is some degree of truth to where, like, there's a right place and a wrong place to have conversation. Because if you're at grandma's 70th dinner party, you really want to bring that up and sort of fight with your uncle.
Yeah.
Or if it's your birthday party, you can talk whatever you want. You know what I mean? Or who's at the birthday party? Or who's at the dinner?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there is some very good thoughts around what you just mentioned. So I'm really happy to hear that.
So I would consider myself a lover of wisdom. I just love wisdom. I really do. I love trying to figure out, like, I want to write another book called This Is the Way, which is like the theory of business. As Einstein approached the universe, I just have this conception of like business, and there has to be the way to run business. There has to be. And so anyway, but if I'm like that, and still have a part of me that's what I would call maybe not authentic, and that's the part that is like cliche, I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but I kind of, like, when I'm talking now, I'm talking to someone, like, I'll stop, and it takes me a little bit longer to speak, but it's because I'm really, really thinking, and I don't want to say something that's fake or that is superficial. Like, I really want to be authentic because I'm tired of feeling weak. Like, I'm tired of saying things. Like, a client calls me and they ask me some stupid tax thing that they want to do, and I'm, like, immediately I hear it and I feel weak because I'm like, that's not right, but I'm trying to figure out ways to do it. And the self-defense part about me, the self-preservation part about me that wants to retain the client and all these things is like, wants to say something that may not be very forthright, It's like, oh, well, maybe, but when the answer is truly no,
Yeah.
And that takes skill, because you don't want to, if a client's telling you something that's crazy, not smart, like, you don't want to say that's stupid, not smart, you want to say it another way.
Sure.
So that takes some skill, and you got to think about how you're going to deliver that. But if I am like that, then how many others are just so, like, just going through life with these, what I call these memes, right? These ideas that are like cultural ideas, but they're not really real. It's just they catch and they go viral. So it's like a virus, like the idea of well, let's not talk about those things. And that idea, I don't think that's part of the American spirit. I don't. Now, you're right. See, because life is a duality. And even my views on just things have just really evolved as of late because you don't want to be too extreme one way or the other. Like you don't. Like you need progressiveness because we need to advance. We need conservative because that's culture, and culture protects us from the things unknown. See, culture is like is what Jordan Peterson would say is the epitome of like Darwinism. It's that culture evolves so that the highest ideals, that the most the smartest thing to do sort of evolves, and it manifests itself in our laws. So it's like from a biological sense, creatures evolve and the strongest survive, but it's like principles and morals and ideals evolve so that society exists. Because it wouldn't make sense if we were still living in the dark ages and we were all killing each other, right? Like that's not what happened. So you're saying, well, how do we get there? Well, we got there through evolution. So when progressiveness gets to the point of wanting to tear down everything that culture has built up, that's dangerous because you don't know, like you have no idea what could happen. Like these walls that seem restrictive, it's like our kids. You have 3 daughters. I'm sure you're going to have these walls, these invisible walls around them, which you're going to allow in their lives, which you're going to allow them to do. And you know, you're not doing anything that is to harm them. You're putting up these walls to protect them so they can flourish, right? Now, there's going to be times that they're going to be upset. Well, Dad, you're too restrictive. Dad, you don't never let me do anything. And you're going to say, sweetheart, I have the best interest of you in mind because your thoughts truly are above her thoughts. They're above all of your daughter's thoughts, and you love them. You love them. And so culture is like the same way. Like these walls that we have that seem restrictive, like we can't even conceive on how much they protect us. And so it's very dangerous to start tearing those things down. And so, to the point of like Gabe is like, I think that's the point of like this discourse. I think the idea of talking and writing things out and thinking is going to be the solution. What, for this business to progress, for our people to progress, like to create an environment where they say, but you know what, I can trust Joe and Keith because they're authentic. I'm sure our people listen to this podcast. They're, probably our most dedicated people. I know for a fact that they listen and they enjoy it, and they're seeing who we are as people because we're not trying to be fake. And there's something to that. Like if we can just be real, like I really think people are extreme one way or the other. Really to the far right or to the far left. They're extreme because they haven't done enough thinking about who they are. And so they're just grabbing on to something that sounds good. And you got to realize that the hero is both. The hero is moderate, they're independent. They know when we need to change things up, progressiveness. And they know when we need to protect our culture. That's history. And that's what we've learned from history. And you got to have both.
All said.
Drop it.
The monologue.
Drop the mic. You got anything to add to that? Or?
No, man.
Yeah.
Hey, that was fantastic, I think.
I feel like I just went through it. I've never been to hot yoga, but I've heard it's really refreshing for the soul. So I feel like my soul's refreshed. But it happened because, man, what you said, Gabe, and I hope they heard that, really fired me up because, here literally an hour ago it was like, no, and then I'm like, well, why do you think that? Just think. If you take anything from this podcast, think. Ask yourself questions. Why do you believe what you believe? That's how we're going to progress. Because I love this country. I love America. My son knows I love America. I bought American cookies. I love this country. I'm sure you can empathize from where you've come from. And we need to have a podcast about that, about where we've come from. Like truly, truly where we've come from. Because we've come from the dirt. We've come from the pit. And the reason why is because this country, which is the best country in the world, and what it stands for gives everyone the opportunity. There's no need to be resentful. because this country has the opportunity. We afford people college. We will pay for the college. We will afford, if you can't afford it, they will literally give you grants. Is racism real? Sure, let's not deny that. But we've come a long way. I grew up in a racist, environment. I had people call me wetback. That's an hour south of here. So I know it exists. I'm not going to deny it. But I also know that we've advanced. And I also know that we're here right now. And we're employing people, and we're giving people benefits, and we're helping people grow. And I don't know if any other country could afford the opportunity. So God bless America. God bless you all. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.